All
good,
right.
y'all? It's your guy Bendu. Welcome to Talks Talk. I got my guy Ben with me. Say what's up to the people, bro.
What's up? What's up? How y'all living?
Shit. So we here to talk about China because y'all know I've been wanting to talk about China for a while, and honestly, I didn't just want to do a video like espousing what I've learned, from different people like Danny Haifong and the Gray Zone and things like that. But I wanted to have a opposing view, I guess, and so that's how I brought Ben on, so we can have a conversation about it. So actually, we were actually just talking off camera about a topic. So I'll let you go ahead and start off, man.
All right. So I was kind of gonna go into how like China's like fucking with Africa in the first place, but I was doing more research in like their policies and how they're operating the country. It actually sounds like what people want the U.S. to be, and I think people are worried about like what they want. They want the American dream to succeed. The Chinese dream is like doing everything Americans wanted to do. So to start off, like they got their own like multi-ethnic society where people like are cooperating together. Like it's a society that's being led by the people for the people. It's capitalism that meets their interests first, rather than siphoning off all the wealth and prosperity over to like the top 1%. It's globalization without the aspect of oppression because they're not going into other countries and like straight up taking their resources and imperializing them that the U.S. has a history of doing. They're heavily invested in reducing the poverty and economic. They're bringing economic development and renewable energy into the country, so it's actually like super developed, like modern. It's everything that we want America to be. So we are really sorry about that.
Yeah, that's what I found interesting about it too, because it was like just to tell you, like I'm pretty sure you noticed, I used to be a Trump supporter, and one of the reasons why I rocked with Trump so hard was because of his stance on China. And it's like, going into his trade war, like I saw how like he was literally hurting American farmers with the trade war because China was basically like, oh yeah, nah, all right, you're gonna do this bullshit. Like all the products we buy from y'all, we don't have to. We do it to be nice. So no, fuck you. And they took that away and basically screwed over a bunch of farmers and things like that. That's when I started paying attention to their economic dominance, kind of. But then as I started looking into China from the economic lens, like I started to get a peer into the social lens, like kind of like what you're talking about. And like a lot of my preconceived notions about China was like, oh, they're oppressive to their people, like Chinese people are racist. Like I've always heard they're racist towards black people and shit like that. When it's like,
yeah, you hear that a lot.
Yeah.
That's more so like them like in the US, more so than them like over there. Like apparently in that country, like they're a lot more open to tourism and like foreigners coming in. You gotta think about how like multi-ethnic they are as well. I mean, like,
they border so many countries too. It's so big, or they border so many countries and different people that it will only make sense that they would get an influx of diverse people coming into the country. So they wouldn't be like, I can see like a nationalistic, like kind of like a Trump France mindset of like coming into their country, but not necessarily a racist. And I also found it interesting that so the video I sent you, I think Danny Haifong was in one of them, right? He was talking about he was talking about how he went to China and like when he went to the Xinjiang province where they say the Uyghur problem is going on and everything.
Right. And then they had the police like protecting the mosque. Like it wasn't them like monitoring or like surveying the Uyghurs, like trying to oppress them or nothing.
It literally like
because there's a history of jihadist attacks like over there.
Yeah, with like Mike Bloomberg, who just ran for fucking president, was literally doing that with our police. Literally. So it's like,
so that's backwards.
Exactly. So it's like everything y'all accuse China of, it actually turns out that we're doing. And it's like, that's when I fell into the trap of, all right, I don't know if I should be forming my opinion on China from the perspective of, oh, well, America is far worse, so I guess China's okay. But it's not even that. And as I dug deeper and started looking back into like just the socialistic countries, because China's not a communist party. China's a socialist. China's not communist. I keep trying to explain that to people too. But a lot of the attacks you see, especially from like the State Department and shit, is very similar to how they attack countries like Venezuela and how they used to attack socialist countries, Latin American countries, all through like the late 60s and 80s. And it's like, it's the same shit.
What they did with what they did with like Cuba and like even like the Soviet Union. The reason China is different is because they actually had the solidarity to stick together and build up their economy. And now they're actually, in a lot of ways, doing way better than we're doing. Like their GDP is set triple from the year 2008. It was like 7,900 US dollars, and by 2023, it's set to be $21,200. That's almost tripling in like less than 2 decades.
Yeah,
Like,
and that's
wow.
and I think that's a product of redistributing, like understanding like the means. So what a lot of people think socialism is, they think is Stalinism, like Stalin communism, where that's not what socialism is. Socialism is literally the people dictating the means of products and services. So where the blending of China's economy comes in, like they have some communist influences, because like we're like socialism, for example, socialism is supposed to be basically the people and the workers demanding and dictating like the means of like production and things like that, like what goods gets made and things, shit like that. Like for example, we were in this pandemic, and because it wasn't profitable for them to, you know, make mask and shit that we needed for the pandemic, it's not profitable for them to, you know, make them in mass and have them in reserve, and also for them to make, you know, for them to make the equipment to, you know, make sure they don't, you know, go bad or anything like that. Like it's not profitable for them to do that. So they wait for the demand. And that's just the inherent part of capitalism. Like you need a demand in capitalism, you need a demand in order to have a, you know, a product to meet that demand. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but when you have hyper capitalism where you don't make the necessities you might need in an emergency, that's a bad thing. China doesn't do that shit. China's like, look, you know, we understand, and they understand viruses way more in a different way than we do, because they've been more exposed to them over there than we have been. And so like, but it's just like, but just off the virus shit, it's just like a lot of the lies that spread about the country is crazy. Like literally just like Venezuela, like level crazy. I don't know if you heard like a lot of the propaganda around that country. Like they literally talk about how people break into zoos and eat the animals in the zoo. That's like, yo, like people I've literally seen news. I heard like Jake Tapper.
I heard the inflation was really bad there at some point. I haven't really gotten into like
what you know why it is.
Why?
So it was a 1-2 punch coordination of the United States and Saudi Arabia. Nobody ever talks about this. So Venezuela has the largest oil reserve on the fucking planet. It's bigger than Saudi Arabia, like double or triple Saudi Arabia, I believe. So
right.
Yeah. So literally what happened was the United States saw that. So the Hugo Chavez, you know, situation that happened when they tried to overthrow him back in like 2003. I've recently been learning more about Venezuela as well too, but they tried to overthrow Hugo Chavez in 2003, and basically the people in that country said, "Yeah, nah, fuck that. If y'all don't let him go, we're gonna start killing everybody in this fucking country, including the Americans." So they ended up having to let him go back to his country, and shit like that, blah, blah, blah. So what ended up happening, but moving forward, what happened was, so the demand for oil started going up, right? Saudi Arabia kept their prices low. So everybody's like, why would you do that? And then the United States started imposing sanctions on Venezuela. So what does that mean to you? In my mind, that's saying, oh, we know how close Saudi Arabia and the United States is. The United States more than likely said, hey, look, we're trying to squeeze Venezuela. So, because they're an import-export economy from what I've heard. So literally their economy hinged on them exporting oil and importing different shit and everything. So if you're not exporting oil, you know, you're not selling your oil for a larger price than you were before, what's going to happen?
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
And then in tandem with the sanctions as well too, you know, on top of that. But you also, I recently learned this. So Venezuela benefited. So Trump, and this is like goes against the the Trump, he's an anti-war guy narrative. He was actually putting the squeeze on Venezuela by doing the Keystone Pipeline. So the Keystone Pipeline would have connected, from what I believe now, not from what I've read, I believe I'm saying this right. It's like Trump going forward with the Keystone Pipeline would have bypassed America's need, specifically the Koch brothers, like the Koch brother type oil people and shit like that.
Right.
Because the Koch brothers specifically like would go to Venezuela and buy oil. The Koch brothers like bought their crude oil from Venezuela because the oil they were getting in Texas wasn't the type that they needed. So literally Hugo Chavez, knowing who the Koch brothers were, was like, oh, y'all want our oil? All right, bet. And he like basically like doubled the price specifically for them as a fuck you. So yeah. And then like Venezuela go ahead.
No, so Biden closing down that project kind of fucked this over almost.
And that's where I'm conflicted at, because you know a lot of people lost jobs, obviously. But I see it as not fucking goes over with Venezuela because Venezuela doesn't want to smoke. They actually want the United States to just leave them the fuck alone. So it's like I see it as a good thing for Venezuela, where a lot of people probably won't agree with me with that because they believe Venezuela is just like they actually believe Maduro's a dictator. That's the crazy part, which is crazy. And I'm bringing up Venezuela for China because I feel like you'll see the similarities on what they say about both of these countries. But for example, so the opposition person there, his name is Juan Guaido, right? So this guy attended American universities, the same places like a lot of these fucking CIA people went to and everything. So he's been around intelligence, and like none of the mass majority of the Chavistas in the country, which like makes up most of the voting bloc, like most of like the Hugo Chavez movement is called like the Bolivar movement because of another Latin American leader down there who started like a socialist, overturning of all of Latin America, basically getting rid of the colonial elements of America and the United Kingdom. So basically you have most of them are those people, like they fuck with Chavez. And it's also a racist colorism thing going on down there as well, because most of the people that support the opposition and support regime change in the United States basically coming in and overthrowing the current president, most of them are like white. They're like light-skinned, very highly light-skinned. And the people that support the Chavez movement that benefit from the social programs are mostly darker skinned. And literally the state media down there literally they used to call like Chavez and the current guy, they would call them like monkeys and shit like that, like all types of racist shit. Yeah. And the United States the mainstream media literally props these niggas up. Like they talk about the opposition movement like they're good people. Like literally they go out and beat the Chavista people, like kill them. There was this one journalist, she said she literally almost saw a Chavista journalist / activist get burnt alive. Like they poured gasoline on him trying to burn him alive.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so they want
going in like. Now go ahead.
Yeah, so Juan Guaido literally is unpopular. People don't like this guy. He's severely unpopular. But he literally goes into town square and has like rallies and shit like that against Maduro and shit, calling him a fucker, this and that, calling him all types of shit. Like people in the country protest and he allows it. So it's like some fucking dictator that allows his opposition to go into fucking town square and basically say all types of shit about him. It's almost as if it's not. And then on top of that, they like to say the elections and were rigged and everything, where that's not true at all, because the opposition group would not let the UN come in to investigate the elections to make sure they were done properly, where Maduro, who's the president, invited the UN to come in. And like the UN, Jimmy Carter, he does like a election protection type of thing where he like investigates elections to make sure they're all on the up and up. Jimmy Carter has literally said like Venezuela has one of the most honest election systems I've ever seen. It's better than America's, literally. I'll send you this video where this journalist Max Blumenthal, that's from the Gray Zone. He like basically owns the the videos I sent you and everything.
Oh, he's with Danny Haifeng as well, right? Like same.
Oh no, so
like
Danny Haifeng, he writes for Danny Haifeng writes for the Black Agenda Report.
Right. I'm thinking about Anya, the one girl. Yeah.
That's actually his wife.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But they went down there and like did the whole election. They covered the election process, and the people in the streets are literally like, yeah, America, stay out of our elections. We want Maduro, blah, blah, blah. And then even there was this one guy who said America, and this is when we had our elections. He was like, literally, we know who our president is. Right now, America does not know who their president is, and they have the nerve to call our elections rigged. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. But I think Venezuela applies to China so much, from everything from the social aspect, and I guess we'll get to the economic towards the back half, but just socially, like they try to paint these countries like as everything that America is. So I think it's kind of like The Shadow. I don't know if you heard of The Shadow from like I forgot what the guy's name is, but like it's like basically the
Carl Jung.
Yes.
Psychologist. Yes.
Yeah. This guy Jimmy Dore talks about it a lot. He's like a political pundit too. He does the same type of shit I do. He brought it up in one of his episodes, but it's like the gay guy or the big buff jock that makes fun of the gay guy when deep down he's secretly gay. You feel me? It's like
that projection that's going on. Yeah.
That's literally what the United States is. The United States is this hyper fucking capitalist, I don't give a fuck about people, racist piece of shit. And it's like a lot of people in this country don't want to admit the racist roots of this country, so they just like blind themselves from the history. And I'm not, I'm not sitting here saying like, got to sit here thinking about, oh my God, this country used to be racist. What the fuck, like every day. But it's like, you got to acknowledge history the way it is. Like this country is built on racism.
It's how we were built. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's literally the foundation of like how this country was built. Like we just feel some type of way when we see a country just being economically successful, having legitimate democratic elections, because we haven't really seen that in our history. We're not used to seeing a global power become so strong in a legitimate, honest way where it's giving back to the people. Like there's one line in one of the videos that you sent me where socialism is more of commanding the heights of the economy, which is controlled by the state, whereas there's still integration of private capital. And the democracy, according to Chinese, their definition of democracy is backed by services of the member to the community. Whereas with America, it's just we have the election and we quote unquote voted for it. The majority wants you to win, but at the end of the day, when you're in office, you're still doing the same shit to the people. You're still taking from us. You're still taxing us, not benefiting like our lives. Like, has the standard of living in America truly risen? Like in the past few years, in the past decade,
it's going down.
Yeah, sad.
Which is crazy, and that's what I found interesting too. Like, people like to talk about the Chinese Communist Party. Like you hear like I know Trump and like Pompeo and all the Trump's people. Literally every time they would talk about China, they would have to preface it by saying the Communist Party of China or the CCP, this and that. Basically trying to throw in the communist red baiting shit in there and shit like that. But like what they don't understand is like the way the CCP is structured and set up. There's like, first of all, there's like 90 million people in the party itself, like 90 million people. And then on top, yes, it's a lot of fucking, because China has a lot of people. They have like what, like
yeah, that makes sense, but still,
it's a lot of fucking people. But they literally, so whenever you are getting into the Chinese Communist Party, you literally have to go serve the people in the poorest villages in the fucking country. So they send you to like, a poor, I don't know like the exact, states or whatever provinces that they're called in China, but they'll send you to like a poor province and shit like that. And you have to go serve there for a couple of years to understand the needs of the people, because their system is set up to serve the needs of the fucking people. So it's like,
whereas in America, it's like you got politicians, they go to like Harvard, Stanford. Like, when's the last time they did some like community service?
Exactly. When's the last
time
have
Joe Biden did some
shit? Yeah, Joe Biden just puts hearts on the fucking White House lawn and says, "Yeah, fuck you and your fucking stimulus check. Fuck you all."
Jesus Christ.
But yeah, and that's what I found interesting too. And it's like, just like their mode of service to the people and shit like that. And it's like for all of their faults, which I want to get to, I still have problems with China too. Don't get it twisted. I still got problems with them, and we'll get to that. But just seeing like, the mode, and I feel like that's why people, it's like almost, it's too good, to be true. Which in some senses it is, because like, like Danny Hyphen, he pointed out in the, in those videos I sent you that China has its problems. Like they still like, even though they're, eliminating poverty at like, fucking mass rates and shit like that, they still have poverty issues there, but they're actually working on it instead of just ignoring it and pretending it doesn't exist.
Right. And now pollution is actually becoming a big problem there too, because of the rapid modernization, like shit like that. Like they're building so many new buildings, like countryside is still very poor compared to like cities like Beijing or I don't know any other city in China, but like even my point, like there's still like that wealth disparity going on. Like even though the GDP is like set to increase, it's still like very fucking low compared to the US. Like our GDP is like per capita is also low, but like 21,000 by 2023 is still like way below the poverty line here. So there definitely are a lot of issues, I would say, as well. It's just you don't really know which sources to trust at this point, because the anti-red like propaganda machine is just so strong, like within our media, even on both sides, right and left. Like you really don't know where to go to get these sources from.
Mm-hmm. So how do you like? And that's just on that note. How do you feel about the So how do you feel about the narrative that obviously like the right and Republicans are more harder on China, but how do you feel about the narrative that Democrats are actually like in bed with China? How do you feel about that narrative?
I could definitely see. I don't know, because the left is always like looking to point fingers at other countries for quote unquote being dehumanizing, like putting down their own people. Like they're always saying like, oh, we had to support like the what is it rights and thoughts of the people of like each sovereign country. We have to respect their nationality. Whenever it comes to China, like under the table, it always seems like they're trying to like make underhanded moves and like comments towards them, especially when it comes to the Uyghur movement and stuff like that. So that's why I was actually looking a bit more into that. And so apparently a lot of this quote unquote oppression that you hear about with the Uyghur Muslims is actually coming from like the history of jihadist attacks in the Xinjiang province that were brought on by the TIP, which is the Turkish Islamic Party, which has ties to Al Qaeda. So a lot of that quote unquote
what country borders China that we fucking destroyed? What country borders China that we destroyed?
Fucking Turkey or something like that.
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan. I don't know my geography, man.
Yeah, nah, you cool. That's all. But when I read that, so when I heard Danny say that, and I started reading articles about just the attacks in China and shit, I'm like, oh, okay. So basically, they're getting overran like fucking a lot of the countries around, like France and shit like that did. That's
right,
like,
right.
Like we see, like so, like we cry for France when they get attacked by terrorists and shit like that and everything. And it's like, yeah, we should, we should feel bad about that. But like when it happens to China, because it's strategically a good move for us to shit on them, we shit on them. When it's like, yo, like we created this powder keg in Afghanistan that led to them funneling over over the border to China, committing their acts of terrorism and shit like that. But like we want to admit fault. That's honest. I feel like that's why China is standing behind Iran. I don't know if you read about that, but I feel like that's why they're trying to get behind Iran, because they realize they realize the bullshit that's going to happen if the United States does regime change.
Right, especially if we keep up with these sanctions and all that. And like, I don't know if like we'll ever get back to that nuclear deal, but it just doesn't seem like any of us.
We're not. I'm telling you right now, because Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State right now, so and this is why I try to explain to people and shit like that, like, they try to make Biden out to be this China puppet and shit like that. I'm like, it's kind of weird that he's a China puppet when he literally picks a guy as Secretary of State who literally was devoting a show to shitting on China. Literally, his whole thing was talking about how imperialistic China has gotten and how we need to enforce the pivot to China strategy, or the pivot to Asia strategy that Obama implemented in office as well. So that's why I find it kind of weird that people say Democrats are like in the tank with China and shit like that, or they're in bed with China, when it's like they say the same shit Pompeo says, they just say it nicer. Like instead of like a fat white dude sitting there saying the Chinese Communist Party, saying borderline racist shit about China, you have like Anthony Blinken up there like, I'm gonna play my guitar and talk about how much we hate China. Like it's the same shit. It's just this nigga saying it differently. He's saying it politically correct, and Pompeo just took a hammer to it. So it's like this whole I just like to destroy that narrative about Democrats, like, and it's not to defend Democrats, it's to stop, because once you get to the point where the Dems feel like they need to enforce shit, this is the same thing we saw with the crime. Like, one of the reasons why Joe Biden pushed for the crime bill was because he felt Republicans saw Democrats as weak on crime. That was one of the main staples during his speech of why he said he was doing this. He was like, literally, I don't want to hear Republicans talk about Democrats are weak on crime anymore. Every crime bill that's passed in this chamber of the Senate since, I think he said like 1970 something, has the Delaware senator's name, Joe Biden, on it. And it's like, literally, these motherfuckers, same thing with Bill Clinton. He wanted to push this tough on crime narrative. So it's like Democrats, their whole strategy now, the neoliberal agenda, is to literally shift the party to the right. That was the whole purpose of Bill Clinton. So Bill Clinton was in charge of this this group or committee. It's called the Democratic Leadership Committee or something like that. I forget exactly what it's called. It's called the DLC. And literally the whole purpose of that was to what they call shifting or pushing the party into the future, modernizing the party, which basically is code word for shifting the party right. They started embracing the 80s Reaganomics shit, like the trickle-down economy, deregulating. Like Bill Clinton did some of the biggest deregulation during the 90s. The Communications Act of 1996, is the reason why we literally have like 5 companies that own all the fucking media.
Right. With
Same
like
thing
fucking
with
Viacom, like I forget the other ones, but Viacom's like big one. It's like big, like tree, like literally hundreds of
Viacom's
thousands of
owned
companies.
by somebody, I think. I forget who bought Viacom. Viacom used to be the 6 companies, or somebody bought them out recently. It's crazy, bro. But yeah, go ahead to your next point if you want to make a next point. I just want to see what your opinion was on the Democrat Republican angle too.
Right. So you want to go into China's investments into Africa, or do you want to talk a bit more about like specifically its economy?
Let's go to Africa, because like that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on, because I know like you have like African roots and things like that, and I wanted to get your perspective on it. So it's like it's weird. I'm in a weird position with that because
So
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it took a lot for me to really just like get out of the headspace where like I'm like very like anti-China on that point, because I'm very sensitive about like, you know, another strong global country coming into Ghana, because it gives me, you know, flashbacks, you know, shit.
I understand, bro. I get it.
Hundreds of years. So from what I'm seeing, a lot of Africans in that country feel the same way. But according to this article I was reading, it was off of the site called portsafrica.com. This article, What African Really Thinks About China, according to a survey that was conducted by the Afrobarometer, which is this Pan-African research institute across the continent, 63% of citizens that were surveyed across 36 different countries generally have positive feelings towards Chinese investment into their countries.
62% had positive feelings?
Yes. And so a lot of these countries that had the most investment, like had the most positive feelings towards that investment, whether it was building infrastructure, bringing electricity, 5G, clean wwater, jobs, like that economic development in those countries. Those were the countries that had the best view, the best outlook of like China's influence in that country. A lot of people still prefer U.S. model. Like there was another study back in 2019, 2020, where 32% of countries out of 18, 32% of countries out of 18 that were surveyed still preferred the U.S.'s free market model versus China's Chinese state policy run model. But regardless, like there's still a lot of people that feel good about having that investment come into the country. And when you look at from just a numbers standpoint, it's off the video that you sent me, China has over 200 billion invested in Africa, whereas US has like less than 8 of that. And a lot of the debt that can't be paid off by these African countries is forgiven, whereas with the IMF or the US or any of these global economic firms or these organizations, like they have these absurd interest rates, they have these absurd loans that can't be repaid.
Yeah,
and that's what
fuck the IMF though.
Yeah. Like ever since like the Second World War, they've just been like siphoning that wealth out, helping siphon off wealth from the global South, whether it was from South America or it's from Africa. Yeah. So that's part of what I was really worried about, especially with Ghana in particular. Just a couple of years ago, they signed a deal with China where it's like $2 billion, where it's going to be invested into Ghana for mining bauxite, which is used in aluminum products such as fire jets and shit like that. But people are looking forward to building that infrastructure in the country because they're hoping that'll bring a lot of jobs. But people are also worried about the effects on the environment as well. So it's a pretty mixed bag when it comes to China's involvement in African countries. But from what I can tell, even just from those few articles that I'm reading and from the videos that I'm watching, it's not coming from a sense of fear of, you know, like neo-colonialism or like ethnic cleansing, like shit like that. It's a lot more mutual in terms of benefits that each side is getting. So I'm still kind of mixed about it because I would like to see African countries growing on their own, but I can also see how we can't really support our own sovereignty unless we have the economic development put into place. That's just what I've gone so far. But
yeah,
pretty interesting.
Yeah, and that was one of the things where it was like I realized I wanted to step back and read more about it because my arguments would always be, well, the United States does this in Africa. Like I'd rather them do that, and it's like I don't want to just my argument to be just whataboutism. So the fact that the poll I actually a lot of the polls I saw the numbers were floating around like 53% and shit like that. That 63% is the first number I've heard. That's crazy, like crazy. But definitely that's why I feel like when it comes to China and shit like that as well, like not even just for the United States but for different countries, like you don't have to mimic exactly what China's doing. I feel like taking like what China's doing is basically a form of a hybrid system, a blended economy, similar to what the United States used to have around the FDR era, where it was like you took a little bit of communism, you took a little bit of socialism, took mostly capitalism with us during the FDR era, but like. Right. I feel like those African countries can learn by blending those economies, taking the best of capitalism, blending it with, China's hybridization of communism and socialism and shit like that. Like literally it seems like what their government basically does is just regulate and make sure like the capitalist elements that they do use doesn't get too far out of control. So it's like, right. Yes, I feel like especially those developing African countries. I'm not saying Ghana's a developing country, but the countries that they are going to that are developing, I feel like learning, like having that be the base jump. So coming from, not being a developed country and jumping into being a developed country with that hybrid economic model, I feel like gives them like a leap in advantage over like how we started, basically. You feel me?
Right.
And I feel like that'll help benefit a lot. That's why I definitely saw the negatives in terms of like, the ethnic cleansing shit. Like that was always something that was in the back of my mind. But even with that, my bullshit meter, how my bullshit meter. I hear bullshit. I can't like. It's like that seems kind of weird because it's like, why would you? And a lot of the shit that they were saying about it just didn't make sense. But also the fact that when you look at how they invest in other countries, like they've invested in Venezuela, they've invested in Iran, like they're investing in all these countries that are basically being like either oppressed by the United States or just flat out ignored. And it's like, right. It's crazy.
It can also be seen as them trying to get them like on their side, like especially with and I literally just heard about this, the One Belt Road Initiative that they're putting up, this multi-trillion-dollar investment that's supposed to run through China, the Xinjiang province, up through Europe, and then across the northern coast of Africa. Like you're talking about a trade route that would include like hundreds of countries, benefit millions, if not billions of people, on top of the trading bloc they already set up with those Southeast Asian countries. Like I told you about this before we started this recording. That's like 14 countries: South Korea, Japan, which is the third largest economy in the world, Australia. So that trading bloc on top of like this one Belt, One Road initiative, like essentially cutting the U.S. like completely out of the picture.
Like, and I'm a United States citizen, so that worries me, obviously. But it's like, can you blame them? So can you blame them? Right. Because whenever you involve and try to include the United States in something, like you see what happens. Like China tried to offer a hand with coronavirus, they smacked their hand away. Trump was like, "Fuck out of here. We don't want your ventilators. We don't want your tests. Fuck you." Like,
right. Like they were the only country like developing all this PPE during this time while our economy was shut down. Like millions of people were out of jobs, and like we kind of needed that at that point. But a lot of it comes from like narcissistic, like we're not trying to accept help from this country that we go so far to demonize on both sides of politics.
Exactly. So before we get to the economy, there was my second point actually. So I wanted to talk about two things. So the second point I had actually goes into the economy, so I'll save it for that. But how do you feel about their censorship?
Their censorship. See, that also plays into it because you hear all these good things about China from Black Agenda Report, from this Black Agenda Report editor. How much of that is actually broken through just from like their censorship, and how much of it is, it's actually legitimate. You don't have YouTube over there. You don't have Twitter or Facebook. They have their own social media app. Was it Weibo, WeChat, some shit like that?
Yeah, WeChat. Something like
that. Yeah. So it's like how much like information about the country like is legitimate is actually coming to the U.S. and then how much of that is like is being true to our anti-red propaganda lens.
Exactly. And that's what's weird. And for me, off rip, I'll just like give you the flat out answer. Fuck them niggas for that. I don't fuck with censorship in any form or fashion. I don't care what context. Anytime you're limiting information with people for the sake of protecting them, that's the same bullshit these fucking social justice warriors and shit. I don't fuck with that shit. Let's let people make their own decisions. However, with that being said, giving the context of colonialism, given the context of economic oppression that they face, given the context of literally nuclear war, the United States threatened against them during the Korean War, I understand, and given the context of the fact that a lot of Americans, like, I feel like they know, but some don't, the infiltration of the American intelligence communities with a lot of those social media apps like Google, Facebook, all that shit, Amazon, like they're in bed, like literally Jeff Bezos is literally in bed with the CIA. Literally, he takes $600 billion or $600 million from them a year to do their.
I gotta look into that.
To do their cloud services. Yeah. All these people. Elon Musk is now making fucking weapons for the military. Like Mark Zuckerberg, literally, we know his shit. Google, literally, Julian Assange wrote this book called like When WikiLeaks Met Google, and literally like basically revealed that Google's been in bed with the CIA for years. So it's like, tracking people, helping them with different programs. Even their ex-CEO, Eric Schmidt, literally sits on boards like that, that talks about like how to bring about facial recog technology here for literally from China, the same shit they use in China, bringing it here to the United States for the sake of like fighting. Now it's, what is it called? It's terrorism, but what's the word they put in front of it for here when it's at home?
Domestic terrorism.
Yeah, domestic terrorism is under the guise of protecting us from domestic terrorism and white nationalism now. So, given the capital attacks and everything. So,
So do you think the censorship that's and the information control that's brought on by private capitalist industries like companies such as Facebook and Google, do you think that's worse or better than state controlled censorship and control over that information?
I think it's all equally bad, which is why I say get both of them the fuck out of here on that, or just on that point alone. It's like, I think in some ways, I feel like they've really done a number here on the people here, because it's like, you don't see like the people in China running around talking about like fuck Americans and shit like that and all that shit. Like, but like literally our propaganda here serves a purpose to literally like make us docile, one, and give some people that are pro-war, because it's a lot of people in this country that are pro-war. They say they're anti-war, but they're really not. And it gives them the goal they need to suck in propaganda to, be okay with the United States, committing war crimes in this country or that whatever country and shit like that. And it's like, we saw that with the Iraq war.
We always need an enemy.
Yeah.
We just always need an enemy, someone to be like pointing our fingers at, because we can't point it at ourselves, because then we realize we got to tear this whole fucking country apart.
Yeah, it was this episode of The Flash. I think it was the Flashpoint, the first episode of the Flashpoint season, where Reverse Flash is in the cell and everything. And he was like, yeah, like you're literally like fucking up the timeline right now, shit like that. Just so you see mommy and daddy, and you just see like Barry walk away and shit. And he just screams, now who's the villain, Flash? Now that's how I felt about America. It's like literally like the whole point of my show is to point out to people that we're the Reverse Flash now. You feel me? We're the evil empire. We're the Death Star. Like we're not the good guys in this. Like, and it sucks that a lot of people don't realize this, but it not only does it commits a toll on us, like in terms of like obviously our soldiers dying, but look at the rest. Like we killed almost 1 million Iraqis in the Iraq War. 1 million. And the fact that the senators that voted for people like Joe Biden, he was one of the most, if not the most, hard body advocate for the war in the Senate. And it's like he gets rewarded with the presidency years later. And it's like
fucking Obama, like sending out drone strikes over the Middle East, like talking about he wants peace, like change for America, but he's literally just fucking over the country, like what Bush did before him. Like,
and that's the thing with Barack Obama. Barack Obama, I call him, my dad calls him the great deceiver, because he jingles this, him alone, him being black, you feel represents like change, when it's like he's actually more the same. Like this is a guy locked up journalists. Like he used the Espionage Act to lock up journalists and people exposing government secrets at a record rate. Like torturing, he tortured a whistleblower in Chelsea Manning, like literally. Persecuted a journalist in Julian Assange. Like he literally sent tiger swan out to stop the protest at the Dakota Access Pipeline at DAPL. Like all this fucked up shit, his drone wars, as you said, like it's so much fucked up shit that Barack Obama did in terms of being he was a bloodthirsty maniac in more ways more crazy than Bush. And it's just like the fact that people don't see that. And then we go to the economic side with here, like how he could, like he literally fostered in prior to Trump, the largest redistribution of wealth to the richest people in the world. And then Trump came in and did the CARES Act and basically said, "Here, hold my beer, nigga." but it just lets you know that all these guys are the same, man. Like, you know, Obama and Biden and them are going to warmonger against Syria. Like, don't get me started on Syria, man. Like, people have been completely lied to about Syria. Syria is like, they've been trying to
talking about the proxy war that's going on there right now, right? Between Russia and
It's not even a proxy. It's not a proxy war. It's literally not a proxy war. It's literally the United States is like literally in some way is definitely oppressing Syria, but in some ways going after Russia for conducting business, for doing capitalism, literally, for being kind of crony capitalists in a sense. But so we're not in Syria to free those people, as you know. We're not there because Assad's a bad guy. We're there because Assad will not let us put a pipeline through Syria and is allowing Russia to put a pipeline through Syria that's going to send natural gas up to Europe and make Russia the dominant purveyor of natural gas in the country. But also, you have the elements of Saudi Arabia that does not fuck with Syria because Syria is actually a secular nation. Assad was pushing the country to be more secular. The women there don't wear hijabs and shit. Like, they're actually allowed to drive, unlike in Saudi Arabia. Actually not. I think they are allowed to drive now in Saudi Arabia, which I would recommend Saudi Arabians like walk that back, like, because women driving. But I digress. But
so Syria now, what Syria was kind of like what Libya was back in the day, like what Gaddafi was trying to do. Like he was a bit more secular, like he was allowing women to like dress the way they wanted. It was a bit more democratic and it was a bit more socialist in the sense that it was offering these public services and these welfare programs to the people, right?
It was that, but you know what made them kill him? Go in there and kill him? He said, I'm going off the petrodollar. And that's what
right.
in there.
He wanted to be paid in euros and I believe silver or gold.
Something like
they
that.
Wanted to pay, which will completely delegitimized the U.S. as like says the Federal Reserve currency, which is another topic I want to go into.
The United States holds 86% of the world's reserve currency, bro. 86%. 86% of business is done in U.S. dollars on the fucking planet. And it's like people wonder.
Not good.
Yeah, it's
not backed by anything either. That's the shitty part. So once this hyperinflation like really kicks in, like countries are going to see like, hey, this literally isn't worth paper that's printed on. They're going to send it back to us, and then what the fuck are we going to do? That's another thing we got to talk about: gold and silver, and like just the status of the changing currencies going on in the world. That's like another issue.
Oh yeah, for sure. You're going to have to educate me on that because I'm still learning about that myself. I'm learning about it through the lens of crypto, though. So I started learning about it through the lens of MMT, the modern money theory. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So basically, what that is,
they like to call it the magic money tree theory, which is not true at all. But yeah. So well, definitely, I'm definitely trying. I'm going to have you back on. So I'm gonna have you back on to do another China episode, and Del Dale's probably going to be on here when we do it because he's definitely. Yeah, but I definitely want to do a crypto economy episode with you.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, but the fucking Syria shit going on in Syria, bro, it's insane. Like literally, we're literally in that country when they don't want us there. They literally made it clear they don't want us there.
So pretty much like any other country we're in. Militarily.
Pretty much. Well, Afghanistan, the crooked, corrupt leaders want us there because we give them billions of dollars a year. Like if we leave there, like, you know, the economy's there is going to be fucked because they're not, you know, getting carried by us anymore. But at the same time with Syria, though, Syria was a profitable nation. Like, and it's It's the fact that, and it's the same thing they're doing in Venezuela. You'll see the similarities. Assad's a bad guy. He gasses his people. Just like they said, with like they make up the craziest shit and people believe it. Like Susan Rice stood in front of the UN for Gaddafi and said Gaddafi's army was literally like popping Viagra pills and going and raping women. Like Gaddafi was supplying his soldiers with yeah, bro, with crazy. Like they make their dick get hard and then they go out and rape the women. Like it's weird, like dumb shit. Like nobody stopped to say that sounds kind of bullshit. Like
It's not like a fucking Family Guy episode, like some South Park shit.
that literally sounds like a fucking South Park episode where they're doing like a rift about that shit, like doing a parody of that, like actually.
Wow.
But yeah, but you know, aside, so that's why we're in Syria. We're in Syria for oil, of course, as usual, natural gas, fossil fuels, basically is what it boils down to. But it's also the fact that we're literally putting sanctions on them that is unnecessary, but it's more insidious. So they like to say that, they like to tell you that that war started naturally. That's actually not true. So that it was a civil war that happened, and they tried to lie and say that Assad started gassing people. That was a human rights violation, and that's the stipulation they used to go in and invade the country, which actually is not true. So the gas attacks have been debunked, proven to be bullshit, and the United States actually blocks the OPCW, like the actual people who were on the ground and did the investigations. So they're basically the people who like investigate chemical attacks and shit like that.
Okay.
And, like literally they fabricated, so there's literally 2 copies of the attack, the last gas attack in Duma when Trump bombed them back in 2017. So the original investigation basically said like, yeah, like this was staged. It wasn't like these missiles were shot here. It was like people just dropped them here. And then when journalists actually went and talked to the people, like, so we saw videos and shit of like people like showering because of the chemicals and shit like that, pouring water on themselves. They actually went there because the United States just got finished bombing the area they were in. And whenever they start bombing and shelling and shit like that, they go down into the basements, and they basically were suffering from hypoxia, from the dust, from the bombing and shit like that. And that's why they were showering themselves off every day. It wasn't because of chemical attacks. It was because we were dropping bombs on them and they had to go in the basement and hide. So yeah, so that turned out to be bullshit. And then they literally had a CNN reporter go there. So it was supposed to be a sarin gas attack, right? So if you're in an area with, you know, where there was a supposed chemical weapons attack, right? You're not going to smell shit, right? You're not going to pick shit up and start smelling it, right? This chick goes, yeah, this CNN, look up the video, dude. It's hilarious. This CNN reporter goes to the site and she was like, yes, gas attacks here. She's like, let me see. She picks up a book bag and sniffs it. She's like, yeah, there's gas there. Like, what? What? Like literally just bullshit like that. Like what the fuck? So but there was a so it was a thing called the Arab Spring that they said was happening across all of the Arab countries and shit like that. It just so happened the Arab Spring was more intense in countries that had geopolitical issues with the United States, like they were aligned against the United States and shit like that, but whatever. One of those countries was Syria. So what ended up happening was they said there was this rebel faction and shit like that that went into overthrow Assad because they were tired of being oppressed, blah, blah, blah. We know the whole story. Turns out those freedom fighters are actually fucking terrorists with ties to Al-Qaeda and literally ISIS. So Barack Obama literally created ISIS because he funneled all this money to these freedom fighters who turned out to be Wahhabist jihadists and were going in basically killing people that did not agree with them religiously. And because Syria is more of a secular nation, it's very ripe with that shit.
So, very convenient for us.
Yeah, but then on top of that, you literally, so there was this journalist named Serena Shim, and she basically uncovered that the United States was funneling these ISIS people through Turkish bases. So it was an effort between the CIA, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia, and basically they were funneling these terrorists over the borders via American bases in those countries and shit like that. So literally, like the United States is facilitating all these Al-Qaeda people and Wahhabists and jihadists like funneling into the country. So when you see the United States doing shit like that to a country that they don't like it kind of the China's claims about the Turkish party and shit like that. kind of makes sense in that lens.
Essentially funding terrorists so we have an excuse to go into these countries and fuck their shit up.
But not even just funding the terrorists. So they would actually train, and this was actually recently uncovered, I believe, by WikiLeaks. There's documents that show that the United States and the UK were funneling money specifically for the propaganda campaign. So they would train some of these terrorists as journalists and shit like that. Some of these jihadists and shit like that, they would train them as journalists to go into like these Western media outlets and shit like that, and basically push this bullshit propaganda to where it's easily debunked. So any of the journalists that were actually on the ground, so there were a lot of journalists. There's this one female, I forget what the fuck her name is, but it was a lot of them that were actually on the ground. It's a guy named his name is Medhurst, Richard Medhurst. He has a YouTube channel. He's actually Syrian. I don't know if he was there when the war broke out, but he like reports on Syria a lot because he's actually Syrian and shit. Like he talks about he's a good one. I would definitely look into Serena Shim's work before they ended up killing her, by the way. They killed Serena Shim, that journalist. So she was actually driving from Turkey because the Turkish government issued a warrant for her arrest. And if you don't know, the Turkish government is like literally like notorious. It's known for like oppressing journalists and shit like that. Like literally it's literally, I forget what they call it, but it's like basically walking into hell for a journalist, for an actual journalist who's not going to push propaganda. So she was trying to flee back to Syria, I believe. She was trying to flee from Turkey, and she ended up getting into a car accident where she mysteriously died, and the driver could never be found. And her cousin, who was Syrian, I believe, or Turkish, one of the, I don't know, I forget which one her cousin is, but she had family back in that country and shit like that, where they were at. And her cousin lived there and was driving her and shit. She said when they got into the accident, she was still alive when she left, but they said she died on the scene. Yeah.
They killed her later once they realized she was still alive.
Yeah, basically.
Wow.
And her cousin basically fled because she thought they were going to try to kill her. So crazy shit, bro. Crazy shit. But that's and I'm bringing up all these examples like Venezuela, Syria, and because it relates to China and the fact that the United States can't do China like that. They already know that.
They're just copying and pasting the same propaganda they use in all these other countries, like the same tactics, funding, the spreading propaganda, the religious extremism, like it's all the same shit. So and it's like when I heard about like Uyghur Muslims at first, I was like maybe they fucking are terrorists, like who knows? But then like I start hearing from like left and right as well that like, oh, they're just oppressing them because they're minorities, but it's like I don't know.
Yeah, so that's why I do want to go to China one day, bro. Like, that's one of my goals, because I want to see for myself. You feel me? Like, yeah, I trust Danny Haiphong, his journalism and shit like that. I trust Max Blumenthal, everybody from the Gray Zone. I pretty much trust their journalism. Like they haven't been wrong yet, and obviously I trust Julian Assange and WikiLeaks and shit. But it's like I want to see it for myself.
Yeah, I still don't really trust like the Chinese government, Chinese Communist Party.
Oh yeah, I don't either. I don't trust any government. I don't trust any government.
Well, like them especially, because just I don't know, to be able to censorship across state level versus private companies that have their own interests. I mean, I don't know. But you can make you made the argument earlier that like Facebook, Google are all in bed with the CIA anyway, so who fucking knows?
But I think they're acting. I don't think the United States government is in control in a sense. I think these corporations, like we literally live in a fascist state. We live in a corporatocracy, which is literally like
it's more of a capitalist oligarchy. But continue.
As Mussolini said this best. Fascism should be called corporatism because fascism is basically the merging of the state and the corporate. The government, basically the state and the corporate world, so like that. It's the merging of those two worlds. And it's like, the fact that fucking like Bill Gates is allowed to own most of the farmland in America now. Like nobody knows that happened during the pandemic.
I actually read about that, yeah.
That's fucking nuts. And this is the same guy, like he cut like Whitney Webb, look into her work. She does like a lot of work on Bill Gates, does a lot. She did a lot on Epstein, and she does a lot on these like government projects and shit like that. But Like one of the things, like this dude like doesn't have any type of degrees in medicine or anything, and it's like he works on these boards like doing back. Why the fuck is he involved in making the vaccines?
He's gonna involve gonna inject nanochips into our brain cells.
I mean, that's like a fucking wet dream. That's what he wants to do. But and it's like people look at me crazy when I say this. I understand where Bill Gates is coming from. In some senses, I actually do agree with him. Those guys, and I know you just looked at me crazy too. Those guys believe in like this hyper control because you gotta realize the type of dude Bill Gates is. Bill Gates is one of those nerdy nerds and shit like that tries to fix everything, like control freak. So when he sees a problem, it bugs him that he can't solve it. That's the type of dude Bill Gates is. Like it bugs him. I don't think Bill Gates is motivated by money, like people try to make it out to be in that sense. I think he's motivated by actually like wanting the world to be better, but through his fucked up lens of being better. Because this is a guy, his dad was a eugenicist, straight up and down eugenicist. A lot of people don't know that. This is a guy this is a guy who like literally has a trail of bodies following him from Africa and India, where he did all these fucking vaccination tests and shit like that, where all these fucking kids died because they don't have parental consent over there in those countries and shit because they're poor.
Right.
So
there's no like documentation because like they're in these poor countries, so like it'd be hard to like find out about these kids themselves.
Yeah, literally, this comedian Tim Dillon made this joke. He was like, Bill Gates is literally just like running around sticking needles in people in Africa. Like that's literally kind of what he's telling. Like, Jesus. But those type of people like control, and it's like they want the world to be better. And I understand the point of view where they're coming from, but the world doesn't get better through control. The world gets better through understanding. You have to get people to understand, and that's why I do this show, and I do shit like the talk we're having now to kind of like deprogram people in a sense, and not to like say they're wrong, because like I said, I don't trust any government. I don't trust the CCP. Fuck them. At the end of the day, fuck them. I don't care about them. But however, if their governing is benefiting the people, then I'm going to take the good that they have and not just completely say fuck them as a whole, like most Americans say. It's like, and most Americans, the fuck you China shit comes, the disdain they have towards China comes from the economic policies that we implemented in the late 70s and definitely when it was expedited in the 90s. All these trade deals and shit where our jobs got outsourced over there, all this shit. That's where it comes from. And that's understandable. But don't blame China for that. Like that's China taking advantage of a situation for them to get out of poverty. They literally use that to get out of poverty. Like America literally transferred its middle class to China willingly. That's literally what they did in a sense. So it's like, you don't blame China for that. Blame that for the craven hyper-capitalists in your fucking government. It's like, we wanted cheaper prices. Literally, Bill Clinton was talking about this. Like, we literally traded our sovereign, or not, I wouldn't say sovereignty. I feel like that's a step too far. I feel like we've traded our middle class for cheaper prices because America likes cheaper shit, so we can buy more shit.
Traded our ingenuity, our like what everyone is saying, what makes America great, hardworking middle class, like we gave that away. Like what was I gonna say? Like that's part of the reason why like this hyperinflation that I keep talking about. Like I feel like that's really just gonna come to bite us in the ass. We owe like so much money to China in our own currency. So when are we gonna reach a point where we're literally like printing so much of this? So what?
That's actually not true.
How do you mean?
So you
have no manufacturing base. So how are we?
Nah. Like, so do you know who holds most of America's debt, like foreign wise? Take a guess. Just take a guess.
Israel?
Nope.
That's a wild guess. No.
Japan.
I thought they were like they own the second most after China. Have they gone up next? Really?
Yes. Okay. This is from a 2019 article I read.
Okay.
Yeah, I kept seeing like a whole bunch of articles and shit like that, and like statistics and shit like that kept saying like Japan. And it's not by much. Like I guess a couple billion if you want to think about it. But I think China has like 1.2 or trillion. My fault. China owns like 1.2 trillion, and Japan has like 1.4 or something like that.
Okay, but it's still like really close. All I'm saying is like.
But hold up. But that's just in terms of foreign, right? Actually, The central banks hold more American debt than all of China.
Like just
Like,
our central bank, or like the central banks of like all countries. Like,
let me hold up. I'm about to pull this John up that I saw. Give me 1 second. Just keep talking. No, keep talking.
so what I'm saying, regardless, like we have no manufacturing. We have barely any manufacturing base in the U.S. Like we have no means of like producing any of these goods ourselves. So once all these other countries see that we're just going to keep printing money like to pay for shit that we can't make ourselves, they're just going to send it back, or they're going to demand more, or they're going to demand a currency that's actually backed by something. Which is why I go again back to gold-backed currency, which is why I notice you go to cryptocurrencies, because that's the new quote unquote digital gold that's been popping up. Like we're already in the middle of a like recession. We have all the symptoms of depression. Like it's just a lot of our money is also being siphoned into the stock market as well.
We're in a depression. We're effectively in a depression. And it's like, my thing is though, like, look, my knowledge of modern money theory and shit like that, like the reason why, so if America was actually investing, so we need to, that's why I'm for shit like a Green New Deal, because that's shit that we can start doing here to make that shit here and do all that shit here. However, when it comes to who owns that shit, who gets the profits for that, that's where I feel it should be slightly nationalized, or we need to have an influx of cooperations, of worker co-ops in this country, in my opinion. Like, and you know the whole concept of like a co-op, right?
Like over that.
Like it's like worker owned, basically. Like it's worker owned, like the
like kind of like more unions and like more like I guess like worker run type organizations.
A cooperation is basically like a union run corporation, basically, in a sense. It's like a union. So imagine like the workers dictating everything, the means of production, the means of how you make the product, who's your boss, you know, your hours you work, all that shit. Like
right. So the business hierarchy would be a lot more flat compared to what we have now, where it's top down, CEO, and then like millions of workers, right?
And it takes away the profit incentive in a sense, because if everybody's getting their fair share, they're going to be, you know, more comfortable with that, getting their fair share for what they feel their worth is. And when you have, so for example, you're not going to get this, like the overall incentive is not just going to be profit, is basically. I feel like we need to be limiting profit in areas where we're having problems. So healthcare, like, you know, I'm a big advocate for single payer healthcare. I feel like we need to completely remove the profit motive out of healthcare, period. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. Like, I feel like, look at our period. That's like, I'm not even going to go into that, period. But also, I feel like when it comes to things having to do with climate as well, we need to some aspects of profit. So I'm not saying completely private or not privatize, completely nationalize that shit. But I feel like it should be a blended economy, but we need to have a more influx of worker co-ops, like a worker cooperative like version of like Tesla, or like a worker cooperative, you know, renewable energy electric company. Like we having these problems in Texas down there now. And it's like a mixed bag in Texas. I'm not gonna speak too much on Texas because I'm doing my research on that right now. It's a lot of swirled shit going on around there and shit like that. So I gotta sift
it's
through
goddamn mess.
Yeah. But like investing in infrastructure and shit like that, like we're not doing that. We keep doubling down on cheap, like Americans are cheap. We want everything for less than what the rest of the world is paying. And it's like, that's just not feasible, especially when you want fucking 5 of everything.
Right.
That's my whole point. Like, we need to work on consumption. Like, we need to be training people to stop like consuming so fucking much. And it's like, you know, that's one of the things, like, it's not going to, and look, I'm not saying people shouldn't have families, but I think the hyper focus on having families is going to add to that problem. Like the Republican Party right now, like Mitt Romney proposed this bill, like basically paying people to have families and to have children, which is a good thing. I'm not denying that that's a good thing, but it's kind of not a good time to be proposing that during a fucking depression, nigga. Like you shouldn't, these policies shouldn't be mandated for people solely to be married based upon your fundamentalist, your beliefs, basically. Not fundamentals, but your beliefs, which I agree with. I agree with having families. I'm not sitting here espousing anti-family shit, but I feel like the focus shouldn't be on families, like people starting families. It should be getting money in people's pockets so they can fucking start families and afford to have families. And also on that, like, you know, just like focus on cooperatives. Like, dude, when I found out Huawei was a worker co-op, bro, all the shit made sense about it. All the reasoning why the United States hates that company so much, like trying
to bring them down, trying to like stop them bringing in their products into the U.S.
It
Spreading
makes
this
so much
propaganda about their phones, like spying
the
on
whole
their users, like
yeah, the 5G wave and shit like that. Like the whole. That's how I try to explain to people. Like, yo, look, I don't like to shit on people that have a theory about something. I'll listen to you and hear you out and hear what you have to say. But it's like me knowing what I know about like how the government operates, and especially like it's a lot of in those conspiracy like circles and shit like that. Like a lot of it is fuck China, anti-China shit. A lot of it is. So
right.
that kind of worries me because it's like I kind of know what that is. And it's like, I don't know how to explain to them what it is. I'm not going to say what it is because I'm not trying to offend anybody, but it's like, I know what that is. I know what you're falling for right now. And it's like, I'm not trying to say you're an impressionable person, but it's like, and everything you're saying isn't wrong, but I'll like some of what you're saying, I feel like is not honest. A source you got it from is not being honest about shit. And maybe they got it from a faulty source as well, their information, but
a lot of our issues also come from us. And this goes back into the modern money theory. We're trying to pay for shit that we don't have means of production to actually produce. We have all.
How do you feel about MM2?
About what?
How do you feel about MM2?
I think it's bullshit. Like you can't just. So the idea behind it is that the government can pay for whatever programs or any social initiatives that it can simply because it's the government, and it can loan money out to itself essentially. But that's not how an economy works. The whole point of an economy is that you have a limited amount of resources to meet supply and demand. So if you have less producers, less people working, how are you supposed to pay for more shit than you did before? You know what I mean? Like we're running up our debt like billions of dollars a month. Like I think it's the government is we're selling like $120 billion worth of bonds every month. I forget the exact figure, but nearly half of all US dollars were printed in this year alone. Just think about that. Less people are working, like we're shutting down like factories and all that, but we're supposed to pay for all the shit. We're supposed to have all these, just look at all the executive orders that Biden passed. So let's have deal with climate change. We're supposed to have he's trying to raise the minimum wage, but he actually cut that out because he realized he couldn't meet that demand. He's trying to send these stimulus checks. Like he's trying to pay for all this shit. And like, how are we supposed to like keep that sustainable? Like that's not effective for us in the long run.
I see, and the part I disagree with it is like they show you every day that the debt and all that shit doesn't matter. Like literally when they gives like nearly $1 trillion a year to the military and give an increase every year, I feel like that's proof that that shit does not matter, in my opinion. When you keep adding money to shit that does not add worth, and nobody in the government, you know, like you never hear Rand Paul like talking about like the hyper, you know, defense budget. You never hear like Rand Paul like when they're talking about this tax cut that added $2 trillion to the debt and deficit. Like nobody ever talks about that. But when it comes to like, for example, healthcare, like they're like, oh, how are we going to pay for it? And it's like one, like single payer, like Bernie's plan is cheaper than what we pay now, literally cheaper. It saves us trillions of dollars over 10 years and saves us billions of dollars per year. So it's like in my opinion, like how can you afford cheaper healthcare? Like cheaper free healthcare. When, you know,
a lot of that is also like budget allocation as well. Like, yeah, like we're spending billions of dollars like a month, and like our debt is like going up by trillions. Like a lot of this also, we didn't rebalance our budget once the economy shut down. We spent trillions in the military. Like, why didn't we reallocate that towards education, where you got kids that can't fucking take classes because they don't have like internet or laptops at their crib? Why couldn't you reallocate that to the fucking stimulus programs that you were trying to add? Like, to
whoa there, you sound like a defund the police commie there, Ben. It's like, no, I wanted to throw that joke.
Got you. That was just my point. Like, a lot of it is just basic economics. Like, don't pay for shit if you're not willing to rebalance your budget, or if you're not willing to be more productive than you were before. Like, that's just the basic. Yeah, that's just the basic fundamentals, like being productive and like making money.
And I
That's
feel like,
why.
but I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off. My fault.
Very cool. Like, and that's why with like modern money theory, it only really works for us for as long as it has, because we have the Federal Reserve currency, and because we're also able to like essentially go to these other countries like Libya, like Syria, and essentially destabilize their countries to like keep our currency at the top. Because we know if Libya was able to succeed with transitioning away from the petrodollar system and get paid in euros and gold and silver, then they would still be around. Who knows what? Who knows how powerful that country would be today?
And yeah, and I agree with you in that sense. However, like I feel like looking back to the FDR era, like we're basically like, we were printing a lot of money back then to get us out of the Great Depression. That's where I feel is like kind of proves your point kind of wrong in a sense, because I feel like when you're putting that, and actually no, it kind of proves you're right, because I think we're saying the same thing. If you're going to hyper print money, invest it in the people and products that are in shit that's going to be productive for your country, right? So for example,
Right.
invest that in the good aspects of the Green New Deal that's going to create better jobs, that's going to create this renewable energy source and shit like that, that's going to make America the dominant. Like we literally, if we were to invest like half of what we invest in the military and green energy, bro, like we will like hop skip China in a heartbeat. Literally.
Right.
Am I wrong in saying that? Let me know if I'm wrong in saying that. Am I wrong?
Nah, because like as of right now, like you got companies like Tesla. They don't even make money off selling their electrical vehicles. They make money selling carbon credits to these other automakers. They actually made like way more money from that Bitcoin shit than they did actually selling cars. They lose money on cars that they make. China's completely beating us in the EV sector.
Because they have fucking electric cars already on the road. Like it's like a normal thing to have them there. Like Danny was talking about that. He said literally like you don't hear like how loud the country is because all the cars are electric. Like, and it's like what the fuck? Like that's what pisses me off. It's like how propagandized is this fucking country? Like literally. And it's like I'm not saying that in the sense like, oh, you don't agree with me, so it's propaganda. It's like it's obviously fucking working there. Their political or not political, their pollution rate is going down because of the decisions that they're fucking making, and ours is going up as we like the defense budget, like the American hegemony regime is the largest polluter on the fucking planet. The American military is the largest, the Pentagon is the largest polluter on the fucking planet, and nobody talks about that shit. Like it's only like French people.
As well as
like
the millions we spend to subsidize fossil fuels and fossil fuel industry as well. Like that doesn't help at all. That helps keep our prices low to like. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you got it, bro. You got it.
All right. So like billions that we use to subsidize like fossil fuel sector, like those billions could have been used to like help fund like EVs. People always talk about like, oh well, EV batteries like they're too low capacity. Like technology still sucks, but like it wouldn't suck if we took the billions that we use to subsidize like all these oil companies like into like companies like we have Tesla, but it's like who's really gonna spend like 40,000 on like a new Tesla? I can't when I can just like buy like Honda Civic, a used Honda Civic for like 12,000. You know what I mean? Like it's just cheaper at that point.
Like the more money, and that's why I feel the government should throw its power around. So you have like, more right-leaning people, conservative people talk about less government. I don't think less government is the problem. I think the fact that our government is corporately captured is the fucking problem. Like government can work for the people. It's not going to be perfect. It's still not going to be perfect, but it can definitely work in favor of the people if you're willing to make it work in favor of the people. If you're just going to throw your hands up and say, oh, no, we're just going to get rid of the government. It's like, all right, but that's surrendering more control to the people that control the government. You're basically just getting rid of the middleman, basically. That's what I look at it.
I feel like a lot of it also comes from just our solidarity as American people. Like we're very tribal in the sense that we're always against like other ethnic groups or other like groups of people, whether you're right wing, left wing, like gay, straight, black, white, like we have so many divides even within our own country. And we're much smaller compared to China, where they have like literally hundreds of ethnicities and different languages going on. So a lot of that comes from just xenophobia, like the lines that we create in ourselves. Like we have no sense of nationality. So I think that's why we gravitate so much to having enemies outside of our borders, like China, like Syria, like the Middle East. Like it just makes it really convenient for us to like point the finger instead of like trying to fix
I feel like
ourselves.
we've run out of so many bad guys that now we've made each other the bad guys.
That's
Like
interesting.
we've run through them all. We run through them all. Saddam going, Gaddafi's going. But like literally, that's why we hate China so much. They're the only ones left. They the only niggas left. Like, it's like, yeah, like bro, like, and that's what's weird because it's like I feel like Americans know the answer, and I think another element is there like we're kind of pussy. We're kind of pussy. We're scared of our government. People don't want to admit it. Even the niggas that run around with the guns and shit, like you're scared of your government. You are because you know you're going to get killed doing what you're doing. You know, trying, you know, whatever your revolution or whatever. But it's like, and it's like I'm not trying to shit on those people saying they shouldn't like try to, you know, do what they, you know, try to change the government. But it's like you gotta realize like it's a lot of corporate power behind this shit, and it's like it's because of capitalism. People just don't want to admit that capitalism has failed drastically. It has failed. And when you say that, people take it as you saying, oh, what you want, socialism or communism? And it's like, nah, let's just like try different ideas, regardless of what the fuck it is. Literally,
why not?
nigga, like
capitalism.
literally, when socialism goes unfettered by the United States, it's not perfect, but it definitely like operates better than capitalism. Like when you look at what Hugo Chavez was doing, this nigga was literally sending oil to poor Americans here. Peep my IG page. I posted a video on the autopsy, not my IG page, but the American Autopsy. I'll send it to you. I'll actually send it to you. There is this old, now RT America covered it because America, you know, the American media is not going to cover that shit. But literally, there was this old white lady in like New York or some shit where literally she was getting like subsidized. She was getting like her heating oil and shit like that from Venezuela. And it was a program that Citgo was doing in tandem with the Chavez government that was Venezuela at the time. And literally there was this, it was weird because I think Obama had it was like his second or third year in office of his first term. And like the journalist was like, yeah, the United States government hasn't shown, you know, any appreciation for it. And actually Obama has come out and said Chavez needs to step down because he's like a dictator and shit. Chavez literally was like, it's kind of weird. He said, it's a shame that Barack Obama says that. He said, go ask the black people in your country how they feel about you. You're a disgrace to them. You're a failure to them. Like, go talk to the poor people in your country. Like, and he was like, literally, like, yeah, like it is. Yeah, so it's like, you know, when you look at these kind of like, this is like Venezuela was giving our poor people oil. They were helping our poor people. And it's not even, I'm not using that as an example to, you know, say Venezuela is better than America. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, like this woman said here, like, she was like, those people govern differently as, you know, Obama governs differently. She sounded like she was like more conservative, but she was like, they were willing to help me out with what they grow out of their earth. So I don't see them as bad people. Like, I'm like, exactly. Why can't we view these people like that? Like at the end of the day, we're all being oppressed in some form or fashion by our government, even China, you know, even Venezuela in some form or fashion. But it's like when you have the blatant fuckery that goes on, the blatant propaganda that goes on about these countries, that's when it's like, all right, what's really going on here? Like, and it's like everybody does it with China. Like Rogan, I love Rogan's show. Like whenever they start talking about China, I already know where it's going to go. The mainstream media does it. Like you literally, like it's kind of like how like, and it's like they infect you with media. It's the same. Stranger Things, the Russians are the bad guys coming in season 3 now. Like what?
That's more because it was like the time period the show was like basing its story on.
But you don't find it. But you don't find it weird that during this whole democratic Russia hysteria, that now they're going to make Russians the bad guys in a basically democratically controlled network in Netflix. Like, come on. And Netflix is democratically controlled. The fact that they have a deal with Obama lets you know they're democratically controlled. So, but
I don't necessarily want. Let me just say this. I don't necessarily want less government. I mean, I guess I am kind of conservative in that sense. I just believe that over time, people are going to gravitate to their tribe, to like solidarity of their group. So when you have a small government, small elites who are controlling lives of over 300 some million people, like you're trying to appease to the compromises of each person as they try to like build this country, whereas it should be all of us come together as a consensus and like building the country from the ground up instead of having rule of law coming from the top down. I think that's like a crucial misstep, and capitalism definitely has played a role in that because you have a lot of these companies who are controlling everything from the top down, who are in bed with a lot of these politicians. So I feel like we really need to get back to the quote unquote grassroots. I know it sounds like cheesy as hell coming from a black man in America, but like these grassroots American ideals that made the country great in the past. That's just my viewpoint on that.
Yeah, and I guess that's just the dichotomy of our disagreement, because I feel we need to be looking forward and around us to different people that are trying different shit. Like even to some of our enemies, like Bill Gates. There's like, he definitely has some good ideas. You know, some of these billionaires have good ideas, but it needs to be like, yes, I agree with you on the bottom up portion though, and that's why I said ooh, because I just did a video about something called direct democracy. And literally what it is basically putting like the legislating part aspect back into the hands of the people, which gives us more power even over representatives and elected officials. Because basically we would have a say in how policy is crafted in this country. So check out that video I put out. I did like it was like an hour and a half with Sharif and Shelley. That's what their names are. They were cool people. Like they were talking.
Are there any examples of countries like doing that direct democracy shit? Really straight up from the roots?
Not that I could think of, but literally it's literally in our constitution. It's in our, so not in our current it was taken out of the constitution, but the original concept of it was supposed to be to have all these basically people come in and formulate it and start it, and have the people include the people later on when they got the shell of everything done. So they actually did a version of it in like 1787, I believe, in James Madison's state, which is Massachusetts, and they actually had a vote on slavery. This is where actually I sent it in the group chat too. He did, Mike Gravel. That's the guy who proposed this. He was a senator back in the day and shit. Yeah, he was actually famous because during the Obama's 2008 presidential debate, he literally turned to Obama and Hillary Clinton and said, "Both of you scare me." And they started laughing at him. He was like, "Both of you are warmonger, crazy people who will go and invade all these countries. You people literally scare me." Like he was on stage saying this to their faces. But
I'll pull that video up.
Yeah, I'll show that shit. I'll send that shit to you. But basically what they did was back then though. So slavery, fuck what anybody tries to tell you, slavery played a crucial role in this country to the point where we actually fought a civil war over it. But slavery, like we almost came to that point when the country was first founded, because there was a sect of people in this country who did not want fucking slavery in this country, and there was a sect of people that fucking did. So the fact that they try to tell you, like a lot of like conservatives and Republicans try to tell you like this country wasn't founded on racism is bullshit. I don't buy that shit. Fuck you. Like I don't buy that shit. Sorry. But in Massachusetts, they did this trial run of what we call direct democracy now, but literally they had the people vote on whether, like kind of like a direct ballot initiative, but they actually like got to vote on whether they wanted slavery or not, basically. And people in Massachusetts voted no, for like they didn't want slavery to be ratified into the Constitution. And basically the richest people in the country came along and said, "Oh yeah, no, we're not going to do that. So we're actually going to like take that out of the country, take that out of the Constitution. Yeah, we're not doing that. Slavery staying." So literally we have a history of what we call the oligarchs, dictating policy for us. It's always been there. It's not a new thing. And the Constitution was literally crafted to benefit white male landowners. That's just what it is. So it's like, I don't think that's something we should be aspiring to. Like this country was built on slavery, literally. This country was built on the suffering of people, of the lower, poorer class. And in some ways, it was basically just feudalism again, but you just had a group of kings instead of one king.
Right.
So that's,
I think that's go ahead.
Yeah, and I was gonna say that's like in theory what I disagree with you on about going back to what made this country great, because I think what made this country great is actually its greatest shame, in my opinion.
Okay. So you think we have to do a complete pivot to a different ideology, or do you think there are aspects of our history that we can not like aspects, I would say just things that did work in the past that we can bring forward, because this is a point that Danny Hayfong was bringing up. Like, we need a new quote unquote ideologic perspective in order to move forward in this global marketplace.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly like. I feel like we need to be the reason why a lot of like China and different countries that have different markets, structured markets, baffles us so much is because like we can't understand the concept of an economy or a market like not being solely structured around profit. I feel like that's just what it is. We can't fathom that. Like, why are you being a doctor if you don't want to make money? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Where it's like you should want to be a doctor to heal people, but okay. And that's actually, you get shamed for thinking like that. You feel me? In my opinion, I get called like moralistic and shit like that, which I feel is just, it's not moralistic, it's common sense. Like, you shouldn't become a doctor solely for profit. Like, not even just my opinion, that's just common fucking sense. Like, the historic practice of doctors and healers and shit like that, like, they weren't doing that shit for profit. That's something that's new in the United States that happened here, and not even just the United States, but just the Western world in general. But even the Western worlds figured this shit out. You feel me? Like, figured a lot of this shit out. But it's like, but going back to my point, we can't understand the concept of profit, and I think that's what's like, we're going to have to hurt a lot, I think, before we get to a point where we can come to understanding. You feel me? Before we can come to a catharsis, I guess. Because like I said, I'm not a person advocating for like inherent socialism. I'm not advocating for inherent communism. I'm saying take the best ideas of everything, see what works, what doesn't work, take it out, what works, keep it.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of why capitalism hasn't worked in the past, because so much of our population was essentially cut out from a lot of these economic opportunities that were used by companies and 1% to essentially build the country up. So when I'm saying grassroots, I'm not talking, I think I worded myself wrong. I didn't mean like going back to like the 1800s and shit. I mean, just like, just a regular person, like, who wants to start their own enterprise, like, who has the means, like, who owns like the means of their own production, like, who owns their own private capital. Now, once you get into like larger industries like energy, like fossil fuels, transportation, shit like that, then you can sign that over to the state, or you can allow the state a bit more control that, like healthcare, you can allow them more control of that, because there's no one individual or one company that should have the means to essentially control the market and the supply and demand of that.
Yeah, I would involve media in that too.
Media, yeah,
entertainment and shit. But
you mean like a state-led media, or like
nah? So like what I'm doing. So I haven't talked to a lot of people about this. Like, what I want to do is I want to start a media company cooperative, to where like literally, if you want to come in and do like, say like you want to make a movie and shit like that with my company and shit like that, you come sign and shit like that, and you get most of the profits of your film that you get. You just got to kick up like 5%. That's my model I'm thinking about doing. But basically, like, more inclusion and more of a say. So like everybody has a vote and say in how the company is operated. And that's what I feel like we should be moving more towards. Like, I think, that's the benefit of capitalism, is competition and the allowing of choice. So let's actually be real about that and allow choice. Let's allow cooperatives. Let's allow collectives, even like literally, like there's literally like communities that happen like during like the hippie times, and even later, like the movement and shit like that. Like, if people want to go live in the fucking forest and walk around butt naked and trade off the nature's land and shit like that, like, why should Amazon come in and say, oh, well, we're going to take that land from you and turn it into Amazon, and you got to assimilate into the, like, what the fuck? Like, why? Like, that's what I'm saying. You should allow choice on how anybody wants to structure how they want to operate within the society, and on every level, socially, economically, whatever. I'm just, in some senses, I'm a libertarian, in my opinion, because it's like, I'm for like people having absolute freedom, which is like why, I still can't fuck with China necessarily 100% hard body like that. Like, it's not like I hate China or anything. It's just their modes of censorship and shit like that I don't fuck with. And their modes of like, I still feel, and it's like, so the way Danny explained it in the video, like owning land, that's something that's big to me. Like, the way he explained it is that people essentially on paper don't own land. The state owns owns the land on paper, but people basically have land and shit like that. Which I'm like, I don't want it to be like a kind of thing where it's like on paper the government owns this, but it's actually no, fuck that, because they can just come and take it whenever they want to. Fuck that.
Right.
So those are aspects of China I don't fuck with, but like it's like, you know, that's what I'm saying. Take the best ideas of what they're doing and change it to fit our ideology, what we need to be doing. And it's like, that's why I feel cooperative should be the way for any workers that feel like disgruntled and shit like that. Like we should be allowed and not have these monopolistic powers block people from starting cooperatives. Like nigga, like most cooperatives are actually ranked better than actual private companies. Like a lot of people don't know that. Like it's like when you have your means of production being dominated, it's kind of like the concept people bring up about policing. When you have a police officer that's from your neighborhood and shit like that, it's not some white dude from, you know, Middletown, Delaware, policing Wilmington, Delaware. You feel me? It's it's like Marcus from 9th Street or King Street patrolling these streets. So if you shoot somebody, you understand the weight of what you just fucking did. You feel me? If you go in arresting people or, you know, framing people, you understand the weight of what you're doing, and you're less likely to do it. So let's flip that model to the business sector. If you're an energy company or, you know, you're a manufacturing company, you're not going to go polluting your environment so that the kids in your neighborhood get sick. You feel me? You're not going to do certain shit when it comes to production. You're going to produce material. You're going to produce shit that, you know, the people in your community need. You feel me? So it's like, I'm not saying that should be state owned. It could be privately owned, but it's just, you know, owned by the workers as a collective.
Just thinking private sector needs to be more regulated in certain areas just to keep them from taking more than they should.
Yeah, to keep monopolies and shit at bay. Like we should not have we obviously see monopolies do not work in capitalism. It just doesn't. And that's where I'm saying, and that's kind of like my inherent disagreements with capitalism, is that capitalism, like there's competition, but there's only one winner. When you feel me? Like when it comes to competition, you're looking to win, right?
Right.
That's my thing. We shouldn't be looking to, you know, win, in my opinion. We shouldn't like you should be, as an overall society, and the concept shouldn't be like praising people who win. The concept should be us getting better as a species and as a society. And I feel like capitalism doesn't help that. The fact that somebody like Elon Musk has to go build weapons for the military, weapons of destruction for the military, to, you know, turn a profit to start funding his electric car shit, it's complete bullshit. Now that's Elon Musk's decision. He decided to do that. I'm not sitting here sipping for Elon Musk. At the end of the day, it's fuck that nigga. But the fact that somebody has to do that to do something good and beneficial for the world is kind of fucked up, in my opinion. It's fucked up. He shouldn't have to do that. I'm not saying, you know, I'm not here putting words in his mouth. Like, he may want to build weapons. I don't know. That may be what he wants to do. But
he building spaceships, like, who fucking knows? He building spaceships, satellites.
Yeah.
It's not really a big step from that. But even then, like, you got companies like Ford and GM, like, build their own electrical vehicles. So how long can Tesla really try to make a profit before it eventually crash and burn?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, and that's the thing, and that's what it is, man. It's like, you know, I'm looking at different avenues that we can do where people only want to look through the lane, in my opinion, the lens of capitalism. When I'm looking through the lens of socialism, I'm looking through the lens of communism. You know, I'm looking even something Marxism, whatever it is, Leninism, whatever. It's like, you know, we need to do shit radically different in this country because this country is failing. This country's it has failed. This country's a failed state. When you have 70% of your workers that live paycheck to paycheck, when you have like it's like around 65% of people that live in abject working poverty, like people that work 40 hours a week and can barely afford to get by. Like we have working homeless people in this country, in the richest country in the world. That's fucking ridiculous. Like, in my opinion, that's ridiculous. And you have like the top 1%, their profits is like over like $1 trillion this year.
That's something crazy like that. Like, there was like 1 month where Bezos made like hundreds of billions, like in literally just a few months. Like, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to count homie paper. Like, people look at you like, oh, why you counting his money? I'm not trying to be in his pockets, but you got niggas out here fucking starving and shit like that. Like, what the fuck? Like, what you want me to do?
What's another 100 billion to you? Like, You ain't gonna notice that in your account.
Yeah, so I guess we can go ahead and wrap it up. I guess unless you had any more points you wanted to make.
I feel like we hit a lot of shit, but I definitely need more research on like China's influence in Africa, because that's something that's really interesting to me. I really want to see how they move forward and how Africa is gonna really grow from this.
You know what my goal is? My goal is like one of the things, not necessarily for this channel. So my American Autopsy channel, right? I wanted it to be just me, kind of like this, in front of a mic talking. You feel me? However, my overall goal is I want to start like a news, like I want to be a Fox News company, but not me myself. I want to be like a worker cooperative though. Like I said, I'm trying to have it involved with the whole cooperatives joint, but have like a news station, you feel me, and a newspaper and shit like that, to where, you know, you'll read one article from the conservative perspective and you'll read one article from the communist Marxist perspective. I want to bring all that shit into one place, because I feel like that's why there's such this divide, because the media has been created that way, and the media has been created that way by the richest people in the country to pit us against each other. Like when you have like Jeff Bezos, who owns fucking the Washington Post, shit like that, like that's fucking ridiculous. So you take money from the CIA, and you own one of the you know, the largest newspapers in the country, and people wonder why most of the country sees Julian Assange and Snowden as enemies of the state. Like,
it's very convenient.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
so
the way the media is set up, it's like it's just playing play to these sides. Like people care more about like rooting for their side, regardless if they want to be right or not. Like even with this past election, like even with any issue that pops up in the media, whether it's COVID, whether it's climate change, whether it's the election, like it's like watching the goddamn Super Bowl with the way people are just like rooting for their side. They're just trying to like make sure that they win regardless if you're right or not. It's a lot of it is just boosted by ego as well. No one's trying to admit that they can be wrong at times, that they don't always have the answers about a certain issue. Like you need that equalizer. You need to be humble. You need to be learning shit that you're not going to be hearing from side that you're rooting for all the time. And that's why I was doing this, like watch those videos about China and then just reading those couple articles. Like it's not that much, but it's like opens your eyes. It's like so much shit that like I'm trying to search for like articles on that side, like even just now, and it's like I can't find anything that's supporting the Uyghurs or that's like saying like no, the US is fucked for trying to paint them as like victims when, or trying to paint China as like this hostile dictatorship that's oppressing this minority, when in reality it's not even the case. It's the same copy-paste. We fund terrorists. We spend all this money on propaganda in these countries like we've done in the past. Like it's the same shit we've always been doing.
Yeah, man. And that's kind of what I was getting to. Like I just envision like I want to be able to like go to Africa and actually like do reporting there, like kind of like what, you know, the Gray Zone does, Max Blumenthal and shit. Like there was this one video where he was literally, so the whole thing about Venezuela is that they're eating out of garbage, and you know, they're eating garbage and shit like that. And how I told you earlier the story where they say they like take the animals out the zoo and eat them and shit like that because there's no food and shit. Where he was like, oh yeah, like and that they don't have food in the country, they don't have grocery stores. He's like, he just walks in and does this video like, oh, where am I at right now? Oh, I'm at a grocery store in Venezuela. Oh, they have apples. Oh, they have cereal. They have, oh, it's Reese's Puffs here. Like they have all this food, and it's like they have food, they just can't fucking afford it because the United States is putting sanctions on them that's tanking their economy. And then on top of it, I didn't tell you this aspect. The United Kingdom is actually holding their gold hostage right now.
What do you mean Venezuela's gold? They're taking it from them.
Venezuela's gold. So they have it in the IMF bank, I believe.
Okay.
That's why I said fuck the IMF.
That makes sense.
So literally the United States is literally saying, like, basically using its allies as bitches, basically, because the UK is basically our bitch. And like literally, like the UK was like, oh, how about you give up some of that oil? And Maduro and Venezuela was like, yeah, no, give us our gold. Well, fuck you, you're not getting your gold then, bitch. Like, give us the oil. Or literally, they're literally trying to make Venezuela pimp out. Yeah, they're trying to make Venezuela pimp out their oil. And it's kind of ironic that the so-called opposition leader, Juan Guaido, it's just ironic that we like him when he's made it pretty vocal that he's going to allow the privatization of the oil again. That's kind of ironic that's why that they like him when he says shit like that. But I want to be able to go to these countries. That's why I've been working hard trying to save and be able to do this shit. Because like I don't even know what I'm gonna call this shit yet. Honestly, this new shit. But it's like I'm definitely trying to have Matt involved with this shit. I'm trying to have all y'all niggas as well. I'm trying to take journalism back to what it originally was, which is literally the everyday person looking outside their door and just reporting what they're saying. That's literally all journalism is. That's literally it. Like you doing this right now, like reading those articles and doing your research, and in the sense you did journalism.
And that's way more than like the average person is going to do. Because the average person is just going to like hear a headline on CNN, like take that as like verbatim, like that is like assimilated to their mind. Whereas me, it's like I'm trying to challenge the views that I have, even though it's like it's uncomfortable at times because I don't want to hear like bad shit about my own country or bad shit about like I don't know. That's just near and dear to my heart. Like if it's the truth, if it's like help me grow, then like that's how it's got to be.
Yeah, that's how I was. Like, especially when I first, like, dog, when I was getting decompressed from my whole Trump shit, dog, like, dog. I wasn't one of those people that you know, like the Trump supporters that, oh, Trump can do no wrong and shit like that. Like, he farts and it's like, oh, he's pushing out roses to smell them. Like, I wasn't one of those people and shit like that. Like, I saw his clear faults, but it was like, first, it was, you know, my views on China changing. Then it got to him. The last straw with me was I ran with him. Literally, when he killed that general, I was like, yeah, I can't fuck with you, bro. I can't. But it was the CARES Act and the tax reform bill. Those were the two economic things. It was like, oh, okay, so you don't actually care about American people. You just gave a tax cut that benefited the richest people in the country. And actually, basically what his tax cut did was give people a cut. So you drop the taxes for like these first couple of years and shit like that. But then it reciprocates the amount of taxes the rich were supposed to pay onto the American people over time, gradually over time. So literally, we're footing the bill of the rich people's taxes, literally. But then on top of that, it added $2 trillion to the debt and deficit, which isn't a big deal to me. But I bring that up because Republicans and conservatives all the time, whenever a Democrat's in office, oh, he's adding so much to the debt and deficit. As soon as a Republican gets in, oh, we're going to start a new war. Like Bush literally cut taxes and started a $2.5 trillion war. Nobody gave a shit. Like you even had people like fucking hardcore people like fucking Rand Paul who sits here and bitches about like social program. He's trying to cut the post office and shit. But like literally you're sitting here giving Trump a ball bath at the fucking Republican convention talking about, oh, he's rebuilt our military, our beautiful military. Like, yeah, I mean, it's fucking ridiculous. Yeah, it's fucking ridiculous. So it's like they're hypocrites. But that's just my overall opinion on it, man. So I guess we'll go ahead and close it out. You had any closing thoughts, man?
Or nah, just thanks for having me on here. Dope. Speaking to somebody that actually knows their shit, that's not just parroting what they hear off like mainstream shit. Good to be on. Thanks for having me, man.
For sure, man. And yeah, so if you want to shout out your social media, go ahead. Tell people my guy does kickboxing, son. He gonna fuck niggas up if you disagree with us like that.
You can catch these hands, nigga.
I'm gonna join the gym, bro. I'm gonna join the gym. I know I've been slacking, you know, I'm getting a little meaty again, but I'm trying to get in there. I'm gonna figure it out.
I mean, I've been slacking too, so I'm not gonna hold you, but definitely whenever you're trying to get up there, like just let me know, man. Just let me know.
Bet.
All right. Peace.
All right, y'all. Thanks for tuning in to Talks Talk. It's been great having my guy on. And yeah, peace.